This is Darla Letourneau again with Steve Clark from League of American Bicyclists, and he's just finished up his last visit to Southwest Florida, city of Fort Myers. So just share with our network kind of what you learned, what you saw, and what recommendations you gave.
All right. Well, first of all, great group of people today. We had a number of bicyclists. Some were definitely the athletic cyclists who trained for triathlons and other races, and we also had bicycle commuters, and then good participation among city staff and folks from the Bike Walk League as well as the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
I saw also the county staff.
And county staff, and we actually had also somebody from DOT.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And also the MPO
Yes.
staff. So good representation from the public agencies, which is really important.
And a couple bike shops were here too.
And that's right, 2 bike shops were here. So that was really neat to see. As far as impressions, there is the downtown has a good feel to it. It's very walkable. It's a pleasant place to be. Lots of things to do. So there's huge potential, I think. I mean, that's the beginning, is to create an area that people want to come to, right? And I think the city of Fort Myers is doing that, or has done that. I mean, but we did see that in terms of welcoming bicyclists to this area, there hasn't been a lot that has been done. In fact, one of the first things you see when you're on West First Street is a huge sign that says "No bikes," and then it says "This side," and then further down it says "On sidewalk." But it's very confusing, and really it just seems like, wow, we don't really like bikes here. It doesn't. When people see that, they think initially if they don't really study the sign, they think bikes aren't allowed on the roadway. So I did encourage the city to remove those signs. They could put little markings on the sidewalk saying, no bikes on the sidewalk. As far as the roadway, it's a narrow roadway, and it's a good place for shared use lane markings, the sharrows, reinforced with bikes may use full lane signs would make it more effective.
Did you go down McGregor?
Yes, and that's a 3-lane configuration. People are going pretty fast. It's not a good alternative right now, because there are no bike lanes, at least not where we were. Maybe further down there might be, I'm not sure. But it's not like, oh, well, you've got these really wide lanes that you could just put in bike lanes. There are some constraints here. But what could be done, there are some places where you could reduce the number of lanes to put in bike lanes, or even protected bike lanes. And Broadway would be a wonderful corridor. We talked about this, and people really liked this idea. At one time, it was probably a busier street when the Red Sox actually used that stadium. And now we saw nobody driving down Broadway. It's 2 lanes both directions. It could be a beautiful spot for kind of a buffered or protected bikeway. The entire right lane in both directions could become just a wonderful bike route.
Parallel to McGregor? Would that be an alternative?
No, it would be.
Just another.
Yeah, it's another north-south kind of street, whereas McGregor is more east-west. So we looked at that. We did have an incident, which again reinforces the need for more education. We were riding down Fowler, taking the lane because, again, there wasn't there wasn't really room. Well, we weren't even taking the lane. I think we were riding pretty close to the curb in that situation, but a motorist honked their horn and said, "You should be on the sidewalk." So
And we're talking about a 5-foot sidewalk? I mean, a little-
yeah, I mean, again, there is still this question of legitimacy on the roadway, which for I don't encounter that too many places anymore in my travels around the country. Seems like in Florida, and maybe because again the demographics of these are younger people who really felt like we didn't belong on the road. So we heard in the discussion today a lot of support for signs that say bikes may use the full lane, sharrows on the roadway, and again, that's not going to help you get more people bicycling generally, but it will at least reduce the animosity that sometimes bicyclists feel when they're using these kinds of roads, which is important to have people feel like, this is, bikes belong on the street.
Were there any other kind of low-hanging fruit opportunities you saw for some things that could be done in the area without a lot of money and fast?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the concept of on lower volume streets, removing the center stripe and just putting in advisory bike lanes. They're more effective than sharrows in terms of encouraging people to try bicycling.
Was there a specific road here that you suggested?
Yeah, actually, instead of sharrows on like West First, if that's under 6,000 cars a day, and Angelino thought it probably was, that might be a good place to do it. It's even more effective than the sharrows in terms of welcoming bicyclists onto a street. What we find is something like that does encourage more bicyclists to actually use the streets. And motorists they go a little bit slower because there's no center stripe, and it just feels like, rather than bicyclists inconveniencing me, they feel like they're the guest on this street and that they need to be a little bit more careful when you're passing the bicyclists. It's a nice strategy. We see that in the Netherlands, and Minneapolis has been using. They've got now, I think, 3 places where they've done the advisory bike lanes. So.
Yeah, really interesting. Any other, as you're kind of wrapping up your visit, where are you going next?
California,
Oh my God.
and then Texas. So, while the weather is still not great in the northern part of the country, I'm taking advantage of places where the weather's not too bad. So, yeah.
Well, it's been great having you here, and as a resource, I know you're going to be hearing from many of us, and I think that's really an important value for local communities after you've come, that you are making yourself available for follow-up questions.
Oh, sure, right.
And I think we're really hoping there's staying power, and that the momentum that's been created while you've been here continues. So,
Great.
on
Well,
behalf of Bike Walk Wave, we really appreciate you coming down
well,
here.
thank you, Darla. I mean, I have to say that of all the visits that I've had, these have been probably the most successful and rewarding just because of the involvement of you and Bike Walk Lead. Just making sure the right mix of people are involved in setting up media. It's what a difference that has made. I mean, I didn't have that same support in the eastern side of the state, and the difference was truly night and day. I do want to say one more thing about the city of Fort Myers, and that is they have a plan, but it's I mean, you might consider it almost, I won't say obsolete, but it needs to be upgraded.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a vision statement. Somebody needs to come in and look at how do you create a viable network. Because I'm here, 4 hours. I can't.
Right.
Anything I say is sort of like, well, I mean.
And you're talking about their master plan.
Their master plan, really looking at how do we make continuous facilities that will be attractive and will really work for our residents and our visitors. And we only saw a small portion of Fort Myers today, and there's so much more that really needs to be looked at and mapped out and figure out, okay, how do we make this truly a viable network. So that would be a next step, is to do a updated plan and make sure that the people who are involved today are part of that process. It can't be done, in a vacuum.
Great. So thank you.
Thank you.